And we are live with another edition of the All Gas No Break Sports Show. I am one of your co-hosts, Nicholas Pavona, joined alongside by Andrew Johnson, who is making a full recovery this week after missing last week's show. Was here for just a little bit, but was not able to speak last week. So, Andrew, glad to have you back this week for our championship game recap. We now know the final two teams in this year's Super Bowl, a Super Bowl that not a lot of people are very happy about. I'm not one of them. I'm curious to see how this all goes on, unfolds. But a Super Bowl in which maybe you could say it was kind of predictable, but at the end of the day, we now know the final two teams playing. Johnson, we know what side you're going to be on going into this year's Super Bowl, but glad to have you back on the show regardless this week.
I'm happy to be back. I would say about 99%. I still can't do a couple things. You still hear some strain in my voice sometimes, but hey, I'm good enough to go back to work. I'm good enough to do this.
Yeah. Yeah, and you're definitely, you had a very interesting Sunday, that's for sure, as we
A
both did.
roller coaster of emotions.
A very big roller coaster of emotions. That's a very good term at putting that. As we saw the AFC and NFC Championship game go down this past Sunday. The Chiefs took on the Ravens. The Lions went into Santa Clara to take on the 49ers. We'll get into the NFC Championship game in just a little bit, but let's start off with that AFC Championship game between the Kansas City Chiefs and the Baltimore Ravens. This was a game in which Kansas City from the get-go started off really, really hot. They got an early touchdown on their first possession after stopping the Ravens on their first possession, going 3-and-out. The Chiefs would score a touchdown to Travis Kelce to take a 7-0 lead. Baltimore did respond and get a Zay Flowers touchdown to tie the game at 7. But then the second quarter was all Kansas City. They outscored the Ravens 10-0. They got a big touchdown drive with Pacheco getting it to give them a 14-7 lead. And then they were able to get down the field and get a field goal just before halftime. And that field goal Johnson drive was really brutal for Baltimore, considering they had a lot of mishaps in the penalty yardage. They gave the Chiefs a lot of penalty yards on that drive to get them into field goal range and give them that 10-point lead going into halftime. The Ravens tried everything they could in the second half to get back in this game defensively wise, as they shut out the Chiefs in that second half. They did a great job to try to keep this game alive for the offense, but a lot of mistakes from Baltimore in this game. Lamar Jackson throws an interception in triple coverage. We saw Zay Flowers fumble the ball at the 1-yard line going into the end zone for a touchback that cost the Ravens a chance to make it a one-possession game at that time in the game. And the Ravens would, unfortunately, because of their own mistakes, lose this game 17-10. The Kansas City Chiefs are going back to the Super Bowl, their fourth time in 5 years that they have made the Super Bowl. And Johnson, they will look to become the first team since the 2003 and 2004 Patriots to repeat as champions.
I love how you said it. You said it perfectly. The Ravens beat themselves. They lost the game. The Chiefs did not win this game. You could have turned this game off at the 10-minute mark in the second quarter, and you would have missed nothing noteworthy. That's how boring this game was in the second half. Baltimore, let's face it, the OC, and I think someone has to get the blame here. I think it comes down to the OC and his game plan. They tried to show that Lamar was a passing quarterback. They wanted to prove the world that he was the best passing quarterback, and they got away from their game plan. The best rushing team in the NFL has
16 carries total as a team.
Was it 16?
16 as a team, but 8 of them were from Lamar Jackson himself.
Yeah, and how many did Isaiah Pacheco have? 24?
24 carries for 68
So you
yards.
tell me one guy had 150% of your total carries. Lamar Jackson, on average, would throw the ball maybe 28, 29 times a game. 37 this time. And it wasn't working. What was working? The ground game was working, though.
Right.
Gus Edwards, a couple times, hey, he looked pretty good. Lamar Jackson, every time he had that ball, looked pretty good. I don't know why they tried with Justice Hill, and they had a couple rush attempts with Zay Flowers that really didn't do anything. But Baltimore beat themselves here.
I think what happened was they were trying to get a little bit cute with this game. They're trying to prove something to the NFL world that this is a different Baltimore Ravens team. That, yes, they were the number one rushing team in the NFL this season. And they were facing a Chiefs team that, if you remember correctly, the week before had a really brutal game against the Bills in terms of rush defense. So
they could not stop the run.
Right. So that's why when I previewed this game last week with Sean Mulligan, who was our special guest last week on the show, I said to him, I said, if the Ravens stick to their game plan, run the football like they've done all season against the Chiefs defense that has struggled against the run this postseason, that gives a great opportunity for Baltimore to win this game. And it milks a lot of clock off the field, which gives Patrick Mahomes less time to try to win the game. Now, in the first half, they couldn't really do much because the Ravens defense, let's face facts, they struggled in that first half, especially against Travis Kelce.
It wasn't even like they were that bad in the first half. I would say the first 15 minutes of the game they were bad.
Sure, that's that. Yeah, okay, that's fair enough. So first 15 minutes, whatever of that first half, they struggled, but the rest of the game they played phenomenally. That's the Ravens defense we saw all season from them, but they did not stick to their game plan on the offensive side, and they just made too many mistakes. It really showed how much lack of postseason experience this team kind of had because they've never gotten to this point in the AFC Championship game. This is the first time they've hosted an AFC Championship game, especially in their new stadium in M&T Bank. They have never hosted an AFC Championship game. So they obviously knew the magnitude of this game and how much it meant to not only this team, but to the city of Baltimore. And they had so many opportunities to tie the game or make it a one possession game, and they just made too many mistakes. Lamar Jackson was making some bad throws. That interception was really bad. The first one, the only one, I'm sorry, where he threw it to Isaiah Likely in triple coverage, but that's a throw where Lamar Jackson has to be an MVP player. I mean, Likely puts his hand up saying he's open. He was never open on the play. He had no chance of catching the ball. And that's just a play you can't make as a quarterback, considering that Baltimore was nearing the red zone and could have made it a one possession game. And who knows what the impact of that interception happens the rest of the way. Maybe they get the touchdown, the Zay Flowers fumble. Maybe on that last drive where they kick the field goal, maybe they get something on that drive and get a touchdown to tie the game. A lot of what ifs for Baltimore in this one. They really got to their head. Careless mistakes on offense, a lot of bad penalties overall in this game. But you got to get the Chiefs defense some credit. I've been saying it for most of the season. The offense has looked pretty bad for Kansas City, but their defense has done an impeccable job at getting them to this point in the season. And now they're going back to the Super Bowl. And it's kind of different contrasts of styles for the Chiefs because we've seen in these other past Super Bowls, the offense has been the ones that have carried this team to championship glory. Now, this year, it seems like the defense might be the reason why the Chiefs could potentially win another ring.
This is the best defense Patrick Mahomes has had in his career so far. Patrick Mahomes, I don't want to say was a ghost in the second half, but he certainly was invisible. Travis Kelce did all his damage in that first half of the game. Really, the first 15 minutes of that game. Travis Kelce, after the half, had one reception, I think, for 6 yards. He had 100 yards at the half. What did he have at the end of the game? 111, 105, something like that?
He had 116.
116? He did all his damage at the first half. It wasn't like the other receivers on Kansas City were, burning up the world. They did nothing too. This is a game that
8 catches, but that was about it.
This is a game that Baltimore lost, and I don't want to say Kansas City. Patrick Mahomes had the worst regular season of his career, but he's still going to the Super Bowl. I don't know. A lot of things in the NFL don't make sense, and that's one of them this year.
Yeah. I think really, we've seen this a couple times in years past with different teams where there's a star quarterback on your team and they don't have the best regular season stats, but when it comes to the postseason, that's when you play your best. Going into this game, Patrick Mahomes had not been sacked once in this entire postseason. I think he got sacked once or twice in this game. So those are the first 2 times this postseason he's been sacked. So that's also a great testament to his offensive line.
I want to say he's playing really well this postseason, but he's been playing average this postseason.
I mean, 30 or 39, I don't know if that's average. I mean, I think any team would take that.
I mean, yeah, 30 or 39, that's a good game, but I don't know. That first game against Miami just still sticks out in my mind.
You didn't have to do much in that game.
Yeah,
look at how that game went.
Didn't he throw the ball 40 times that game, though?
Sure, but the way the Miami offense was in that game, he didn't need.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, though. Like, you could make an argument that 2 of these games was really won by the Chiefs' defense. The Buffalo game, he definitely won. That's without a debate. The Buffalo game, obviously, I couldn't really speak on this last week. That was a game that Patrick Mahomes won. He was definitely the reason why they won that game. The Miami and Baltimore game, I don't think I can give him credit.
Well, if they don't have that big start they have in the first half, or the first 15 minutes, if you want to put it like that, they don't win this game. So that's what the offense should get credit for. Did they let Baltimore have a chance in the second half? Absolutely. There's no question about it. Because we've seen in years past that's happened. Remember the Bengals game? They gave the Bengals an opportunity, and the Bengals took advantage of that, and they won after having a double-digit deficit at halftime.
Right.
So
And this
there's
isn't
been
like
these scenarios before.
this isn't like basketball where you could, start run down the shot clock every possession. You occasionally get the offensive rebound, especially on the on let's say the college level, right? Because you can, if you're up 10, 15 points on the college level, that's almost a guaranteed lock. 10 points in the NFL, you got to play every down. It's not like you just take four knees and that's it. That was way too much time in the game. So it's not like the offense was like, oh yeah, we're just gonna or you're gonna like in hockey, we just park it, right? You just settle into
Yeah.
a zone and that's just it. You just park it. You get you score two goals and that's it. You play defense the rest of the game. No, football is a game where you have to keep your foot on the pedal here. And if Patrick Mahomes he kept his foot on the pedal and they put up another 17 points in the second half, I'm like, you know what? Yeah, they just killed him. They killed him on defense. They killed him on offense. If the defense couldn't have showed up, and they still would have won, kind of like the Bills game.
It's
But I don't know.
unfortunate. It's really
It feels weird
unfortunate.
to give him credit. I can't
Yeah,
really give him credit.
it's really unfortunate for Baltimore because this probably has been by far was
This
their
was their
best
best
team.
chance of all time.
This is the best chance since those Ravens Super Bowl teams a couple of years ago, a decade ago, and a lot of things were aligning their way this season, and it looked like they were able to get it done. I mean, there wasn't many they've had these injury bugs the last couple of years, didn't really hit them as badly as it has in years past. This season, a lot of people were healthy going into this run. It didn't go their way. You're maybe hoping as a Raven fan, maybe this is a stepping stone for next season because you still have Lamar. You're going to have a couple of these other players like Zay Flowers who had a great game. It's just the only problem for Zay Flowers is the only thing that people are going to remember him by for this game is the fumble that went into the end zone and the fact that after that happened, he cut himself on the sideline out of frustration, which as understandable being frustrated in that situation because that would have made it a one possession game, and then the Ravens definitely put some more pressure on Mahomes to do something on the offensive side of the ball. But yeah, this is a tough break for the Ravens now. They're going to have a bunch of free agents going into this offseason where they're not going to have the
I,
exact
I
same team next season.
I also
So
do want to point out that Travis Kelsey was taunting every time he caught the ball, but the one time Zay Flowers did it, he got called for a penalty. I must have seen half a dozen times Travis Kelsey was either pointing or doing some sort of celebration, taunting, and he didn't get called for one flag. I just want to point that out. Yes, do they deserve all the other flags, et cetera, et cetera? But I just want to say you got to call the game fairly on both sides, especially in a championship game where money's on the line.
I did see that on Twitter. So
And for the record,
you're not the
I
only
do
one
have a
that's saying that.
I do have a Chiefs futures bet, so I'm saying, even though I do have money on the Chiefs to win the Super Bowl, um, you have to call the game fairly.
Keep in mind, he's mostly doing that trying to mush the team.
Yeah, that is neither here nor there.
Yeah. No comment at the time for him in regards to that. But that was not the only game that we had this Sunday, as we had a pretty big of a doozy game between the Lions and the 49ers. Pretty much, Johnson, a game of two halves. First half was all Detroit. They had a 24-7 lead going into the half. Everything was going their way. Jared Goff was making some good precision throws. Montgomery and Gibbs were getting touchdown runs. We saw Jameson Williams get a touchdown run. Laporta, Amon-Ra were doing their work on the offensive side. Their defense looked pretty strong. They forced Brock Purdy to throw an interception. The Niners really had to throw the football a lot in that first half because of the deficit that they were in. And it looked like the Lions were going to go to their first ever Super Bowl trip the way they played in this first half of the game. Then the second half happened. Now, if you're a Lions fan, the big thing that's been going wrong for the Lions this season, Johnson, has been their third quarter issues. They've had it all season. It hasn't really been if you're a non-Lions fan, you haven't really noticed it all year. But if you're a Lions fan, you know the third quarter has been a big problem for them this season. It shows in this game. The Niners down 24-7 going into the second half, do get the ball to start off the second half. They are able to get a touchdown to make it, or did they get a field goal first? Correct me if I'm wrong. They got a field
They
goal.
got a field goal.
Correction. So my bad. So they get a field goal. They make it 24-10 at that point. So then they go back on off. They go back on defense. This is where Johnson, unfortunately, this is where all of the craziness started to happen. So scenario here is 24-10. Detroit has the ball in Niners territory, 4th and 2 at the Niners 28. We know how Dan Campbell is. He likes to go for it a lot. Unfortunately, this was one of those times where he probably should not have gone for it. As Goff threw a pass to Josh Reynolds, went off of his hands, pass was incomplete. Niners get a turnover on downs. That leads then to a Niners touchdown drive in which we saw a miraculous catch from Brandon Ayuk off of the Lions defender's helmet into his hands to set them up for the touchdown. Ayuk would score 2 plays later to make it 24-17. So now, all of a sudden, we have now a touchdown game after it was 24-7. Next play for Detroit's offense, they fumble the ball with Jahmyr Gibbs. Sets up a Niners touchdown in just 4 plays. They've tied the game now at 24 apiece. Everything's going Detroit. Everything's going now San Francisco's way, momentum-wise. The Lions go 3 and out. They punt it away. Niners go back down the field. They kick a field goal. They take a 27-24 lead. Then it happens again. We have the Lions going down the field. They are in field goal range once again. 4th and 3 at the San Francisco 30. At this point now, this is to tie the game. And Dan Campbell goes for it again. They try to get a pass to Amon-Ra St. Brown. It goes incomplete. Another turnover on downs leads to another touchdown from San Francisco to give them a 10-point lead. The Lions would score a touchdown, make it a field goal game. But that was a drive, Johnson, in which, a lot of issues on that one, too. Think about the first 2 plays. They got inside the goal line, got to the 1-yard line. 3rd and goal at the 1. And now keep in mind, folks, there's about 1:05 left in this game. The Lions have all 3 timeouts. They run the ball on 3rd down. They get stopped and lose 2 yards. So because of that, they lose a timeout. And now on the defensive side of the ball, they cannot call 3 timeouts to stop the Niners offense and get the football back for the offense. So because of that, they go for it on 4th down. They get the touchdown to make it a field goal game. They only have 2 timeouts and about 56 seconds with this onside kick. So they have to recover the onside kick. They even have a chance. They don't do it. Niners recover. They are going back to the Super Bowl with a miraculous comeback win, down 17 at the half. They win it 34-31. They will now go to the Super Bowl to take on the Kansas City Chiefs in a rematch of the Super Bowl from just 4 years ago as they look to get revenge from that game. And unfortunately, Johnson, a disaster ending of the season for the Lions, who had a magical year all up until this very end of the season.
Man, I want to just say one thing and one thing only. A lot of people are bringing up the 28-3 deficit, that this is one of the worst games since then. But you know what this reminds me of?
Go ahead.
This game, it's similar because in the Super Bowl, that is a way different situation. Please remind the listeners at home what the lead was, or what the highest lead for the Lions were at this game, during this game.
24-7.
It's a 17-point lead, right?
17-point halftime lead.
You know what this reminds me of? Reverse the clocks a little bit, or go back in time. January 6th, 2018. There was a playoff game between 2 teams where one team blew an 18-point halftime lead in the wild card round when they had such an advantage at, I would say, quarterback. At running back was pretty even, and the receiving core was way better. The defense was better, and they just absolutely blew an 18-point lead at the half. Would you want to know what teams I'm talking about? I think you have an idea.
I actually don't remember.
There was an 18-point playoff lead that was blown by the Kansas City Chiefs and Andy Reid.
Oh,
One of my
Tennessee, right?
Against the Tennessee Titans. Yep, it's all coming back. Marcus Mariota had that pass which he caught for a touchdown. They had such an elite team. Kareem Hunt remember, this isn't the Kareem Hunt of today. This is the prime Kareem Hunt. He just came off a season, 1,300 rushing yards, eight or 9 touchdowns. They had Tyreek Hill. They had all these playmakers. They had all these players on defense. They had Kelsey, obviously. And they lose to Marcus Mariota and really Derrick Henry dragging Marcus Mariota and Delaney Walker, and I guess Eric Decker, Corey Davis,
Yeah,
maybe.
sure.
Sure. Yeah, but that's why I can't really say anything about this Lions team because they lost to a team that's full of all pro players. They lost to George Kittle. They lost to CMC, Debo Samuel, and Brandon Ayuk. Uh, all these, Fred Warner, Nick Bosa, the list goes on both sides of the ball. They probably have, if they was spread out, would it be crazy to say they would have 8 or 9 All Pro selections if this team was spread out, right? Not because you can't
Mhm.
obviously have 8 or 9 All Pro selections on one team. That's too concentrated. Would you make an argument for that?
I if these players were on the Detroit side, you're saying?
If they were this, I'm saying spread throughout the league, right? So George Kittle is now on Minnesota, for example, and CMC is back on Carolina. If they were evenly distributed, right? Because obviously you're not going to give a team a dozen All
Oh
Pros.
yeah. No, I get what you're saying. Yeah.
Like, all these guys would be the man on the other team,
Right.
but they're all here together. So I think Detroit should show no shame in this. The players should show no shame, and I think real shame should be in the coaching staff here. If they had just taken the extra field goals a couple of different times instead of doubling down and say, "Oh, I have to go for it," 4th and 3, and they go for a deep pass. Really? That's the best they can get. Remind me of that Patriots game earlier in the year. Uh, it's kind of insane because the players were kind of set up to fail. I know they on the defensive side of the ball they kind of blew it. On the offense, they blew it in the second half too. But this should have been enough to win because I can think 2 or 3 times where Dan Campbell said, "Now let's go for it." When they were in field goal range, and if they take it those 1 or 2 times, it either A goes to overtime or B it's a tie game, or they win it completely. It's kind of crazy to me.
I think it's a tale of two things for this team. The defense definitely deserves some criticism for the second half. They had a really bad second half. The Niners scored in every single possession besides the possession in which they took the knee to win the game. So that's pretty rough. The only pass I give them is when Gibbs fumbled, so there was short field. That's really tough to not give up points on that possession. So that's fine and dandy from that point. But on the offensive side of the ball, there was a lot of bad things in the second half. We saw a couple of drop passes from Josh Reynolds. That was brutal, especially that one on fourth down. Then you have a mixture of they weren't really running the ball as effectively as they did in the first half. That was really something that was concerning to me because the Niners, it seemed as if they got everything under control in that second half on both sides of the football. And obviously it shows in the final score. They outscored the Lions in that second half 27-7. The biggest thing I remember that reminded me of this game is kind of the Packers and Seahawks championship game from a couple years back. And that was one where the Packers had a 16-point lead at halftime. They were dominating on both sides of the football. And you know, they collapsed in the second half and they lose in overtime on a touchdown from Russell Wilson to Jermaine Kearse. That was obviously, that's kind of not the same scenario only because of how the Lions lost this game because of all the decision making that Campbell did in this one, where a couple of fourth down conversions in field goal range obviously gives you a chance to tie the game or take the lead, or whatever it was at that point. And instead, you go for it, you don't convert, and then it leads to the Niners scoring. This game, obviously, the point I'm talking about the Packers and Seahawks, it's where it seems like everything's going the Packers' way. They should win this game. The Seahawks ran a fake punt, a fake field goal for a touchdown. They had a Russell Wilson miraculous 2-point conversion after Marshawn Lynch scored the go-ahead touchdown to give them the lead for the first time. That one was really the only kind of remembrance I got from this type of game because that was another championship game in which a team had a double-digit lead going into halftime, had everything going right on both sides of the football, and the second half it just seemed as if they lost their identity of what they did in that first half. And now this is where Dan Campbell even said it in the post game. This could be the Lions' only chance, maybe. You're hoping as a Lion fan that you're going to back to this point in the season next year, and maybe even further on. But who knows? You never know how the world of football goes. Think about all these teams in years past where they've had monster teams and they were one step away. Think about, you brought up 28-3. Think about the Falcons. They thought after that collapse, we can get right back to this point in the season and we can actually pull it off this time. They have not even been that close since. They're still waiting to get back to the playoffs. This could have been the Lions' only hope at potentially making a Super Bowl and maybe even winning the Super Bowl. And it all got squandered this past Sunday.
So where do you go now if you're a Lion? I mean, if you're a Lions fan, you've been there for 30 years of mediocrity and then
Right.
some. But where do you go if you have a member of the coaching staff now? Someone has to get. There has to be some. I know they just had their best season in 30 plus years, but someone has to get reprimanded for what happened here. Is it the front office? Is it the owner? Do they sit down with Dan
They're
Campbell?
not gonna reprimand anyone just because of how big the season was.
Right, I know the optics would look really, really bad, but I feel like they have to have some sort of internal discussion. Maybe not, definitely not firing, but I'm saying they have to have some sort of discussion
Well,
with the
keep in
coaching
mind,
staff, with the players.
right. Keep in mind they thought they were going to lose the offensive coordinator Ben Johnson because he was been a head coaching candidate for the past season, and they got news today that he's going to be coming back this upcoming year, so that's big for them on the offensive side. Aaron Glenn's been the defensive coordinator; he's been pretty solid for them. The Lions' issue realistically is they need to fix their secondary. That has been a problem for them all season. But another issue for them is they're going to have a lot of free agents going into this offseason. I think they're losing a couple offensive linemen, a couple players in that secondary. They have a bunch of free agent players that they have to address this offseason. I think that's really the concern for this team. If you really want to, quote unquote, run it back and try to get to this point, they got to figure out how they can bring these players back. The biggest player that I think of that comes to mind is Chauncey Gardner Johnson, who had a pretty big impact for them this season on the defensive side of the football, was one of their better defensive players in that secondary that has been pretty much weak for most of the year. And now he's a free agent. You have to figure out a way to bring him back. And the offensive side of the ball, you're going to be losing a starting guard and Jonah Jackson potentially. You obviously Josh Reynolds had a bad game in the championship game, but he's still a big player for that offense, and he's going to be a free agent as well. The Lions have a lot of issues to address in the offseason, but I don't know where you realistically go.
Here's my question to you.
Go ahead.
He's gonna be 30 at the start of next season. He's been to the Super Bowl, and now he brought Detroit to their best season in the last over 30 years. Is Jared Goff the guy? The same guy who was benched for John Wolford a couple seasons ago. Is Jared Goff the guy?
Well, it's funny that you bring this up because keep in mind, Jared Goff is a free agent after next season.
Correct. And this is why you have to make the decision now.
That is a great point. You have to decide what they're going to do. Remember, they drafted Hendon Hooker. I don't think that really means anything because he's still like 25, 26 coming off an ACL injury. So I wouldn't look much into that. But this is why blowing a game like this hurts even more because now you're going to go into next season where you have to decide about your quarterback. Jared Goff's going to be going into age 30 of his last year of his deal. And you're thinking to yourself, okay, we are hoping to be back in the playoffs. But at the same time, are we looking at a future guy or are we just going to say, you know what, Goff's been great for us since we traded from him from the Rams. We've got to pay him his money. Personally, to me, I think he deserves to get paid. I think he's done a great job in Detroit.
He definitely deserves to get paid. I will not fight you on that, but I'm asking, is he the guy for Detroit? That's the question here.
I think he fits that system too well to not be the guy. So I would say for me, I think just because of who he's playing for and the way that it's worked. It's kind of like a match made in heaven for this team. So I would say yes. But keep in mind, they might have an offensive coordinator, change next season because I would assume Ben Johnson might take a head coaching job next year. So there could be a different, changing of the guard next year for this team. I personally think Goff is the guy for them. I think he'll get extended after this. I'm assuming he'll get extended in this season upcoming. That way he avoids free agency. But he could also play the market. He could say, you know what, I want to test it. I want to see what I can get from other teams. And I'm sure there are plenty of other teams in the league right now, that are looking for a starting quarterback that will want to pay him a good amount of money to help them potentially get to a Super Bowl. So the Lions are in a pickle. That's definitely for sure.
And I think with that being said, we could jump into the next part of our show, finishing up the recap, and go into our news section before we go into the mushing hour.
That is right. We had a couple of head coaching hires, and I did say that this would happen last week. A couple of head coaching hires happened, especially one big one after we recorded on Tuesday. The big news came on Wednesday. That'll be the last segment of this part of our show. But let's go into the first head coaching hire, and that was the Carolina Panthers hiring offensive coordinator from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Dave Canales. He is now the new head coach of the Panthers. He gets a 6-year contract, I believe, too, with Carolina. So kind of a shocker here. A lot of people expected Canales to be named the head coach of the team. Obviously, the Panthers are under new, GM. They have a new GM now. Now a new head coach. They obviously bring someone from in division who did some pretty good things this year with the Buccaneers. Obviously we saw how Baker Mayfield looked this year. Rashad White had a pretty good season. Mike Evans had another 1,000-yard receiving year. If you're the Panthers, you're hoping that you can turn Bryce Young and these guys into something with your play calling. So that's what Carolina's hoping for, with Dave Canales now being the new head coach of their team. The other head coach news that we had is former Rams defensive coordinator Raheem Morris, now the new head coach of the Atlanta Falcons. Now, if you don't remember Johnson, Raheem Morris, a former head coach of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, didn't really have much success with Tampa Bay. Became a defensive coordinator again. He did some pretty good things with the Los Angeles Rams this season, a team that lost a lot in the defensive unit, and they had to pretty much retool and use some rookies to fix that defense this year, and they did a pretty good job. And they were potentially a play or two away from beating the Lions in that wild card round and moving on to the divisional. Raheem Morris now gets another opportunity as head coach as he stays in the NFC South once again, going to the Atlanta Falcons, replacing Arthur Smith, who we will talk about in just a little bit. So we'll see what Raheem Morris does with the Atlanta Falcons team, a team that is obviously going to have to make some decisions about the quarterback play, who that might be. We don't know. The biggest shocker for me, Johnson, and I think you would agree with me, is we expected this to be the landing spot for Bill Belichick.
We
Now,
did.
I don't know if he gets a head coaching job this year.
We did. I saw there were a couple options and some crazy things. Some of my favorite things I saw thrown out there was him hosting a fishing program with or a fishing TV show with Randy Moss. Him having a coaching cast with Nick Saban and Pete Carroll, kind of like a Manning cast, but a coaching cast.
Mm-hmm.
And probably my favorite, he starts to co-host Red Zone this season with Scott Hansen.
I saw one where he might be on. Oh no, it was Nick Saban. Never mind. I was thinking of Nick Saban being on College Game Day.
I mean, hey, Bill Belichick in College Game Day would be great too. You saw what he was with Navy, and when you cut the,
Yeah.
I don't know, when you cut all the boring stuff he doesn't want to answer about his football team, he actually has a great personality.
Yeah, I don't see. The problem is the only interviews he took were for the Falcons. He has to take an interview with another team.
He's also an East Coast guy at the end of the day. Maybe he just didn't want to go out west.
Right. Now, if that's the case, the only East Coast team left to be is the Washington Commanders. So,
which I don't think he would take.
I don't know if he would take that either. The only teams remaining that don't have a head coach are both Washington and the Seattle Seahawks. They are the only two teams remaining without a head coach. And they were both looking at Ben Johnson, who I mentioned earlier, is going back to the Detroit Lions.
So it is of my opinion, when you're at this age of your career, no matter how much you love the sport, no matter how much you love what you do, whether you let's say you work in medicine or you work in some type of business, maybe marketing or advertising, you're a professional sports coach, someone could give you a line share ransom, right? They can give you a king's ransom to go somewhere. At the end of the day, if you're in your 70s, your low 70s, upper 60s, you just want to stay close to home. He's got grandkids. He's got kids up there in New England that'll still be on the coaching staff. Steve Belichick's still going to be on staff. He probably just didn't want to travel. And I'm going to say this with kind of Rick Pitino and St. John's. The reason why Rick Pitino was coaching at Iona was because he just wanted to stay in New York. He lived 10 minutes from the campus. Why'd he go to St. John's? Well, it's a bigger program, and it's only, shocker, 30 minutes to campus. So he increased his commute by 20 minutes each way. And that's the only reason why he left Iona. You heard all these other schools come calling for him, whether it was Texas Tech, which offered them a significant amount of money, more money than St. John's. But at the end of the day, sometimes some of these guys just want to stay close to home. Belichick probably wanted to stay on the East Coast, and that's probably why he only interviewed with the Falcons, if I had to take a guess.
Yeah, so I don't know where Belichick goes from here now. I think
College game day
maybe,
or red zone.
or he just takes the year off. It's either way. I think it's a year off might not be the worst thing for him. Just
Give me Bill Belichick starting a YouTube channel breaking down game film every week. I would watch that
That's not.
religiously.
I wouldn't hate watching that. That would definitely help a couple of coaches in the NFL. That's for sure.
Oh, what the Bill Belichick Coaching Academy online.
Why not? Um, Now I mentioned Arthur Smith earlier, the former Falcons head coach. Game obviously was fired after this past season. Raheem Morris now takes over for him, but Arthur Smith is not going to be. He's going to be on a new team this upcoming season, as he's now the new offensive coordinator for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Um, yeah, if you're a Steelers
Lipstick
fan,
on a pig.
going from Matt Canada to Arthur Smith, it might be a long year. It might be a long year. All I know is, Johnson, is they have officially made me realize that I'm not going to be drafting any Pittsburgh Steelers this upcoming fantasy season.
No, you take the wide receiver 4 and the running back 3 because they end up being the RB2 and the R and the
I mean, Drake
wide
London
receiver
still
2.
looked good. He was the number one wide receiver, so maybe you take George Pickens, but that's about it. That might be about it. Najee Harris and Jalen Warren, who had monster years for them this season, they probably get overtaken by some rookie running back that they take in the 5th round this year.
Sounds about right to me.
Yeah, so good luck, Pittsburgh, this upcoming season. But the final news of the coaching wire, probably the biggest news we had all week, and this is the one I was alluding to earlier, where we were breaking this down last week on the show. I said to Sean, even on the show, I said, knowing our luck, news like this will probably, be broken tomorrow. That's exactly what happened. Tuesday, we finished our recording. Wednesday, the big news broke down. Jim Harbaugh is now back in the NFL, the former Michigan head coach and former head coach of the San Francisco 49ers, now going to become the new head coach of the Los Angeles Chargers. So the Chargers get their guy. He now goes to try to help that team that obviously had some up and down years with Brandon Staley. That's really putting it light in terms, but now they get Jim Harbaugh, the guy that's coming off a national championship win at Michigan this past year. Hopefully, they can help Justin Herbert try to get to the playoffs again and maybe get even further than a collapse in the wild card than they had last season. And the Chargers, they've got it. The Charger fans are happy because it seems as if, Johnson, they finally have made the right decision at head coach.
This is the best decision they could have had because not only you're not taking an unproven college head coach, right? Not only did this guy win a national championship at the highest collegiate level, he also got to the Super Bowl
He did.
with, dare I say it, considerably less talent than the current Chargers roster.
Yeah, no, I don't agree with that.
You don't agree about that? I mean,
that Niners defense was really good.
about that Chargers offense, if used correctly, right? We've always said
If used
theoretically,
correctly, well,
theoretically,
again,
it looks so good because it looks like I think they're gonna take Brock Bowers too.
I think I could see. I would say either Brock Bowers or it's going to be
Malik
um,
Neighbors, some offensive weapon for
Malik
Herbert.
Neighbors or Rome Adunes. I don't remember how to pronounce his name.
Dunze.
Yeah, Dunze. Yeah, I apologize for butchering the name, but the wide receiver from Washington who had a monster year for the Huskies. I would say it's going to be one of those players they take in the first round with their pick. They're picking number 5. And keep in mind, the biggest thing I had, and I spoke about this with Sean last week on the show, is their free agency decisions they have to make this upcoming year. Eckler's a free agent. I would assume he's probably done with the team. I don't really expect him to be with the team next season unless they're able to work out some money issues with him. But this could also be an offseason in which maybe they let go of Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. They might trade him as cap casualties to try to get some money on the board. I don't think they'll do it as much. Maybe Keenan Allen more than Mike Williams, just because Allen is starting to get up there in age, and you got to probably try to get as much value as you can now before he starts declining soon. So they're going to have a lot of decisions to make this off season, but I think just hiring Harbaugh itself gives the Charger fans hope that maybe all this BS they've had these past couple decades is finally going to potentially be over. And you're thinking that this is the guy that can get you into the playoffs and can get you the Super Bowl for the first time since I think the 1980s. So who knows? Maybe Harbaugh can do it. But also keep in mind that with that hiring, that means Michigan was without a head coach. They will hire their former offensive coordinator Sherman Moore, who, remember, Johnson overtook for Jim Harbaugh this past season when Harbaugh was suspended by the NCAA. He went 4-0 in his tenure as the interim head coach. He now gets the full-time gig with Michigan, so a big step in stone for him. He now gets to take over for the defending national champions, who will be going into a big conference realignment this year in the Big Ten.
Okay, and I think with that being said, I think it's time to move on to our final mushing hour
Oh,
of
it's
the
so
year.
sad. So sad.
And I guess we go to our Super Bowl pick. We do have the NFL Honors Awards.
We
You
do.
want to pick those really quick?
We do. So the honor awards will be next Sunday, February 8th. Oh, that's not Sunday. When's February 8th, Johnson? I can't get my dates right.
That is
That's next
next
Thursday?
Thursday. Yes.
I'm all out of sorts right now. So let me get back on track. Next Thursday, NFL Honors is going to be conducted in Las Vegas. Now, the awards that they'll be going over will be assistant coach of the year, comeback player of the year, defensive rookie of the year, offensive rookie of the year, defensive player of the year, offensive player of the year, and the most prestigious award, most valuable player. Now, if I'm not mistaken, each award has been given 5 nominees. So there are 5 nominees for us to get this award, and we will decide who we think deserves this award at the end of the day. So, being that as it may, let's start off with the first award, Assistant Coach of the Year. The nominees, Johnson, are Ben Johnson, the offensive coordinator from the Detroit Lions, Mike McDonald, who was the defensive coordinator for the Baltimore Ravens this past year, Todd Monken, the offensive coordinator for Baltimore, Jim Schwartz, the defensive coordinator from the Cleveland Browns, and Bobby Slowick, the offensive coordinator for the Houston Texans. Who do you think wins this award?
Now it's got to be Ben Johnson, right? I don't think there'd be
I would,
any
I
other
would tend
pick
to,
here.
I would tend to agree. I don't think it really has nothing to do with how the other people are. I think just because of how big of a commodity he is right now when it comes to head coaching opportunities, I think he has to win it. I'll go into the next award, and that is Coach of the Year. And with that, we have the 5 candidates beating Dan Campbell, the head coach for the Detroit Lions, John Harbaugh, the coach for the Baltimore Ravens, D'Amico Ryans, head coach for the Houston Texans, Kyle Shanahan, the coach of the San Francisco 49ers, and Kevin Stefanski, head coach of the Cleveland Browns. Who do you got winning this one, Johnson?
So I went back and forth a couple times. I said, it's not. I said, okay, Dan Campbell, but I have to remember it's a regular season award, right?
Yep.
And then I went to D'Amico Ryans, right? But then I settled on Kevin Stefanski because this guy was dead to rights, no quarterback, brings Joe Flacco back from off the couch and and had a really good shot of making the second round of the playoffs. So for that performance at the end of the year, getting his defense in shape and reviving the offense with Joe Flacco when his season should have been over after week 11, give me Kevin Stefanski.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, the Browns had a lot of injuries too this season, so he definitely deserves a lot of credit for what they did this year with the amount of injuries they had and making it to the playoffs as a wild card team. However, though, I'm going to give it to the team that beat them in the playoffs, and I'm going to give it to their head coach. I think D'Amico Ryans deserves a lot of credit for what they did. First year head coach, rookie quarterback, not a lot of talent when it comes to wide receivers originally going into the year. You had a guy like Nico Collins, who a lot of people associated him, even myself, remember him as a running back from Michigan at one point, then turned into a wide receiver in the NFL. They had Devin Singletary, who had some decent years with the Bills, nothing spectacular, but he has a pretty solid year for the Texans. Collins goes off. They had a rookie in Tank Dell that was doing great up until his injury. And their defense, they did a lot of good things this year defensively. They were one of the best rush defenses in the NFL this year. And that goes to what D'Amico Ryans did for them as a whole. I think he deserves head coach of the year.
All right, I agree. I mean, I see what you're saying here, but I'm gonna stand strong here and say Kevin Stefanski, kind of our first non-mush, first
Okay.
difference.
The next award is Comeback Player of the Year. 5 nominees for this award are Joe Flacco from the Cleveland Browns, Damar Hamlin from the Buffalo Bills, Baker Mayfield from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Matthew Stafford from the Los Angeles Rams, and Tua Tagovailoa from the Miami Dolphins. Who do you have winning this one?
Should be Joe Flacco because what he actually did, because no one expected. I could have guaranteed, even if he had a future bet of Joe Flacco to come back and lead the Cleveland Browns to the playoffs, if you had that, the odds on that beginning of the season would probably be plus 100,000. However, it's going to be Damar Hamlin. So lock in, I guess, Damar Hamlin for my actual pick and Joe Flacco for who it should be.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Damar Hamlin too. I think it's pretty much a foregone conclusion. He's probably gonna win it, but I think Baker Mayfield also deserves some credit for what he did this season. I think a lot of people didn't give him a lot of credit because of how his career has gone this year. And he got the Buccaneers to a divisional round playoff matchup with Detroit and a wild card win against the defending NFC champion Philadelphia Eagles. So Baker definitely deserves some credit, but so does Joe Flacco. But unfortunately for them, it's going to be Damar Hamlin that wins this award.
But you digress.
I also forgot to mention for coach of the year. I think Shane Steichen from the Colts deserves some recognition too. They didn't lose that game against the Texans. He probably could have won this award. I digress nonetheless. Let's go to our next award, Defensive Rookie of the Year. Our nominees are Will Anderson from the Houston Texans, Jalen Carter from the Philadelphia Eagles, Joey Porter Jr. from the Pittsburgh Steelers, Kobe Turner from the Los Angeles Rams, and Devin Witherspoon from the Seattle Seahawks. Who do you have winning this one, Johnson?
It was Jalen Carter up until about week 15, and I think towards the end of the year when two teams need to make desperate playoff pushes, it was Will Anderson that stepped up. So give me Will Anderson for Defensive Rookie of the Year. Maybe an
Okay.
upset of Jalen Carter.
I would like it to be Will Anderson. I just think they're going to give it to Jalen Carter just because of how he started the season.
And remember, it's
Um,
not how you start; it's how you finish.
no, I agree with you. Listen. I would rather give it to Will Anderson. I'm kind of making this pick also to help Will Anderson maybe win, not fully mush him, but I will go with Jalen Carter. As much as it pains me to say, considering he is a Philadelphia Eagle, I'm going to go with Jalen Carter to win Defensive Rookie of the Year.
All
But
right,
then,
that's fair.
and now keep in mind with your next with the next pick, I see what you're trying to do. What the Jets did last season with their awards, and I'll talk about that in just a second. The next award we have is Offensive Rookie of the Year. The nominees for that are Jahmyr Gibbs, the running back from the Detroit Lions, Sam Laporta, the tight end from the Detroit Lions, our favorite, Puka Nacua, the wide receiver from the Los Angeles Rams, Bijan Robinson, running back from the Atlanta Falcons, and CJ Stroud, quarterback of the Houston Texans. Johnson, I think we're both on the same. I think we're both going to agree with this one. I think CJ Stroud is most likely going to win this award.
Yep. Don't even have to say anything. It's CJ Stroud. I'd like it to be Puka Nakua, but when I think they're of equal impact on the field, you have to give it to the quarterback.
Yeah. And keep in mind, if it goes the way that you have it, it would be the second straight year that a team has the offensive and defensive rookie of the year. Remember that happened last season for the Jets with
Right.
Sauce Gardner and Garrett Wilson. So the Texans are looking to repeat history once again, and this time do it for themselves. So we'll see if that does happen. The next award we have is Defensive Player of the Year. The nominees are Deron Bland, the corner from the Dallas Cowboys, Max Crosby, defensive end from the Las Vegas Raiders, Myles Garrett, defensive end from the Cleveland Browns, Micah Parsons, the defensive end from the Dallas Cowboys, and TJ Watt, defensive end from the Pittsburgh Steelers. Johnson, I think we kind of might probably going to agree with this one as well. I
Go
got Myles
Aggies.
Garrett. I got Myles Garrett winning it.
Go Aggies. I agree. Myles Garrett was the heart and soul of that Cleveland defense all year long and really stepped it up to make the playoffs towards the end of the year. I think it's a no-brainer here. Combining that with the Cowboys collapsing the playoffs again, regular season award, but people can have that in the back of their minds. Give me Myles Garrett here.
Okay. And I think we're also going to agree on these last two awards, but we'll see. Offensive Player of the Year, the nominees are Tyreek Hill, the wide receiver for the Miami Dolphins, Lamar Jackson, quarterback of the Ravens, CeeDee Lamb, wide receiver from the Cowboys, Christian McCaffrey, the running back from the 49ers, and Dak Prescott, quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys. Who do you have winning this one?
I think we have CMC, right?
I want to give it to Tyreek badly, but CMC just had too good of a
Heart and
season.
soul. I know I just said heart and soul, but heart and soul of that offense for
Yeah.
49ers. Without them, they make the
Without
playoffs, but they're
CMC,
definitely not in the championship.
yeah. Without CMC, they have a good team, but he just provides another dynamic to an already stacked
CMC is
offense.
delaying their trip to Cancun, which is a good thing.
And Tyreek Hill definitely deserves some consideration because he had a monster year for Miami.
Oh, he does, but CMC exists. That's the
CMC just
problem
had
here.
too much of a good season for him not to win it.
I think Tyreek Hill probably wins it 19 out of 20 different years, but not this one.
Yeah. And then our final one, the prestigious Most Valuable Player Award. The nominees are Josh Allen, quarterback of the Buffalo Bills, Lamar Jackson, the quarterback of the Ravens, Christian McCaffrey, the running back of the 49ers, Dak Prescott, the quarterback of the Cowboys, and Brock Purdy, quarterback of the San Francisco 49ers. Johnson, who do you have winning this most prestigious award?
Well, the best player on this list and who deserves it the most is CMC, who probably has out of all these players the biggest long shot of all of them because he plays running back, which is absurd. It's gonna be Lamar Jackson. Give him
Yeah.
the award. Brock Purdy kind of played himself out of the award a couple weeks ago when they played Baltimore. Ironically, Josh Allen is a turnover machine. Dak Prescott chokes at the end of each year, and Lamar. Well, at least he made it to the conference championship. So yeah, I guess Lamar Jackson is two-time
It's
MVP,
kind
0
of
Super Bowls.
Yeah, it's kind of what you said at the for the work one of the awards we said a couple minutes ago. It's not how you start, it's how you finish, and that's basically what happened for Lamar Jackson this season. He finished strong, really good year, but I would personally love to give it to CMC, but it's a quarterback dominant league. You're going to give it to the quarterback, so it's going to go to
Running
Lamar
backs
Jackson.
getting recognition? No, doesn't happen.
I will say, CMC does have the second best odds for this award behind Lamar, so he is getting some love from Vegas, but just not enough to win the MVP award.
That is
So
quite tragic.
I'm trying to think. I think the last time there was a non MVP, I think it was Adrian Peterson in 2012. I think that was the last time we had a running back or just a non quarterback win the MVP award. So CMC is trying to make some history and try to break that streak, but I just don't think it's possible. So we'll see what happens on February 8th when all those awards go down. But Johnson, as you mentioned, it is our final mushing hour of the season. And of course, it's the big game. The Super Bowl will be played in Las Vegas at Allegiant Stadium. The Kansas City Chiefs and the San Francisco 49ers. Now, Johnson, not only will we be giving the pick for the game, we're also going to be giving our pick for Super Bowl MVP in this one. So the line for this one is the Niners are a 2-point favorite. The over-under is 47.5. Who do you have winning this game, and who do you have as your Super Bowl MVP?
Chiefs +2. Patrick Mahomes wins Super Bowl MVP. Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift go to Disney World, and I'm gonna quit. I'm gonna quit talking about everything.
Do you think they propose? That's been
No, they don't. No, if they go to Disney World together, though.
Okay. I know how much that pained you to just say both of that.
Listen, I got Chiefs money. I already have Chiefs future,
I know.
so I guess I can't lose here, right?
Now,
So at least that's what I'm gonna tell myself.
I want to paint a picture for you because our season record is still very close. Now, you had a big conference championship week. You went 2-0. I unfortunately lost both my picks. So
Yes.
for me to even have a chance to tie, I have to not only pick the game, I have to pick the over under, and I have to get the Super Bowl MVP right. I have to
Yep.
get all that right just to have a chance.
And I have to get everything wrong, so you have to fade me entirely.
So that's exactly why I'm going to go with the San Francisco 49ers -2. I was going to go Niners either way. I think that this is a great chance for them to get revenge from 4 years ago. The only concern I have in this game is Brock Purdy. Is he going to make a lot of mistakes against the Chiefs defense that has been capitalizing on mistakes this postseason? So that's one I'd be concerned of if I was a Niner fan, but I think they are the better team on paper. It's also tough to go against the Chiefs when you have Patrick Mahomes as an underdog, but I'd be as it may. I'll go with the Niners -2. And for the over-under, I have to be correct with it, because if I'm not, then I'm out.
Anyone who's ever seen Uncut Gems, this is the exact plot of Uncut Gems right now.
Exactly. See, this is how I win. This is how I win. I'm having such a tough time picking. I think the over is going to be the play for me in this one. I like both of these defenses a lot, and I think they'll have a good game. But I could also make the case where these two offenses also have a pretty good game, and the score goes over 47.5. So I'll stick with the over for now. Maybe I change it next week. Who knows? But for now, I'm going to stick with my instinct gut and take the over. And for Super Bowl MVP, he might not win regular season MVP, Johnson, but Christian McCaffrey will get his flowers. He will win Super Bowl MVP.
Wow, I think if you parlay that, you might have enough to pay off a mortgage.
Don't tempt me with a good time.
You're thinking about it.
I am thinking about it. Do I put the exact score of the game next?
Yeah, then give me the lotto numbers for tonight.
The numbers are... Yeah, never mind. Yeah, I don't know. I think this is going to be an unpredictable Super Bowl just because we don't know. I obviously, maybe you kind of saw this happening for championship week when we saw the Final Four teams. You were like, it most likely is going to be Chiefs and 49ers, because as an NFL fan, we can't have anything nice. We gotta have all this stuff happen. But that's a scenario that we're in right now. So it really is what it is at this point, I guess. But any thoughts you have, Johnson, before we wrap up tonight's show?
I'm putting my life savings on Chiefs money line just so I can avoid talking about it.
Johnson, before you continue, that's not going to be part of the show. Do we have a show we have to plug in? I don't know if you saw my text.
I did see your text. We have no shows right now. However, stay tuned because we could be at the Woodbridge Card Show on the 17th. There's also going to be one on this Saturday in the Hampton Inn in Woodbridge, New Jersey, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. We're not going to be there. We'll be at St. John's, Yukon for this show, but we'll be back on the 17th. So stay tuned for the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, so next week on the show, you might either hear us being happy about the St. John's game or us being in utter disdain from a tough defeat to current number one in the country, UConn. Should be a fun one at the Garden this upcoming Saturday. But yeah, we had a pretty good showing this past Saturday, I should say, at the Woodbridge Card Show. So
always a good time.
Always a good time, and we're looking forward to be back there relatively soon. But we're also looking forward to this Super Bowl and seeing how it all unfolds. And I'm ready to bet tails for the coin toss, Johnson. I'm ready for it.
It's always heads.
Nope, it's always tails. Tails never fails.
Always heads. Don't listen to them.
Hey, tails won last year. Oh, damn it.
Yeah.
I mean,
you just mushed yourself.
Yeah, I think heads might win now. Oh, boy. I just mushed myself 100%. But we'll see how the Super Bowl unfolds, and we'll also recap if there's any other head coaching news we have in the next couple of weeks, as we're still waiting to see what the Commanders and Seahawks do at the head coach position before they go into the 2024 season. But for now, that will do it for this week's edition of the All Gas No Break Sports Show. Congratulations to the Kansas City Chiefs and the San Francisco 49ers on reaching the Super Bowl and getting one step closer to lifting that Lombardi trophy. We'll have to see who comes out on top as Super Bowl champions on February 11th in Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas, Nevada, and who will be the kings of the NFL world at the end of the day. This has been Nicholas Bona, joined alongside by Andrew Johnson with the All Gas No Break Sports Show. Have a great rest of your week.